of Iran.
In the long history of the ancient Near East, the kingdom of Elam is often remembered for its early power during the Bronze Age. Yet Elam did not simply disappear after its earlier periods of prominence. Instead, it experienced a complex and turbulent revival known as the Neo-Elamite period. Although the surviving sources are fragmentary and often accidental in their preservation, historians have been able to reconstruct parts of this dramatic era. During these centuries, Elam navigated a dangerous political landscape dominated by powerful neighbors, especially Assyria and Babylonia. The kingdom formed alliances, fought wars, and attempted to reshape the balance of power in the region. In this video, we will explore the re-emergence of Elam after earlier setbacks, the rise of new dynasties, and the kingdom's intense involvement in the political struggles of Mesopotamia. This story reveals a resilient state that remained a major player in Near Eastern politics despite constant threats and internal challenges. The apparent disappearance of Elam after earlier conflicts does not necessarily indicate that the kingdom truly collapsed. The survival of historical records often depends on chance. In fact, it is very likely that the Elamite state re-established itself soon after its defeat by Nebuchadnezzar I. Neither that Babylonian king nor his successors possessed sufficient strength to maintain permanent control over the Elamite territories. However, the centuries between the 11th and 9th centuries BC remain obscure. It is certain that Elam must have suffered various calamities during this period, although the details remain unknown. Between the 9th and 7th centuries BC, the eastern valleys that once belonged to Elam, including the region of modern Fars and the ancient territory of Anshan, appear to have come under Persian influence. Exactly when Persian groups settled there is uncertain, but their presence would eventually transform the political landscape of the Iranian plateau. Despite these changes, the Elamite kingdom itself survived. The problem for historians is that no native written sources from Elam have survived from this early phase. At the same time, Babylonian and Assyrian records are also silent. This silence is explained by the fact that both Mesopotamian powers were experiencing their own periods of decline and were unable to conduct military campaigns beyond their borders. As a result, regions beyond their immediate frontiers, including Elam, rarely appear in their inscriptions. Elam reappears in written sources in 821 BC, in the annals of the Assyrian king Samsi-Adad V. The reference describes a civil war within a still existing and relatively large Elamite state. According to the Assyrian record, this state extended from Bit-Bunaki to Parswas, apparently stretching from a region south of modern Kermanshah to Fars. The mention of Parswas is particularly significant. This region was likely already a small kingdom inhabited by Iranian-speaking Persians. However, the sources for this period remain extremely scarce. For most of the 9th and early 8th centuries BC, almost no information about Elam has survived. A more reliable source appears only in the second half of the 8th century BC with the so-called Babylonian Chronicle, a series of annals maintained in Babylonia from 745 BC onward. Together with a handful of Neo-Elamite inscriptions and administrative documents, this chronicle allows historians to begin reconstructing the political history of the period. Additional information also appears in Assyrian royal annals and official correspondence, particularly from the late 8th to the early 7th centuries BC. The ancestor of the Neo-Elamite royal dynasty that ruled between the mid-8th and mid-7th centuries BC was a figure named Humpan-nikash. Unfortunately, his exact chronology and relationship to later rulers remain unclear. The first securely attested king appears in 742 BC, when the Babylonian Chronicle records the accession of Humpan-nikash, known in Elamite as Humpan-nikash. This king became closely involved in one of the most important political struggles of the time. He allied himself with the famous Chaldean leader Merodach Baladan, who claimed the throne of Babylonia and resisted Assyrian domination. Merodach-Baladan attempted to weaken Assyria by building a coalition among its enemies. In this alliance, Elam played a crucial role. Indeed, the Neo-Elamite kings seem to have followed a consistent political strategy. They attempted to neutralize Assyria by influencing or controlling Babylonia, the wealthiest region in the Near East and one of its most important cultural and religious centers. Sometimes they attempted this through direct invasions, and at other times through alliances with Babylonian rulers or rebellious Chaldean leaders.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share this video.
This strategy occasionally produced remarkable successes. In 720 BC, Humpan-nikash achieved one of the most impressive victories in Elamite history. He defeated the powerful Assyrian king Sargon II near the city of Dur, located on the route between Elam and the Tigris River. The battle demonstrated that even the formidable Assyrian military machine could be challenged under the right circumstances. However, Elam's internal and external political situation remained complex. Along its eastern and northeastern borders there existed several smaller states, some possibly ruled by Iranian or mixed dynasties, including Alipi, Pasiru, Anshan, Parswaz, and Hudamari. These frontier regions formed a fragmented political landscape in which alliances and rivalries constantly shifted. The first Neo-Elamite king whose own inscriptions have survived was Šutruk-Nahhunte, also known as Šutruk-Nahhunte II, who ruled from 717 to 699 BC. He was the son of the sister, and probably wife, of Humpan-nikash by another man named Intatu. Early in his reign, Šutruk-Nahhunte used the traditional royal title, King of Anshan and Susa. However, by the next generation Anshan had already become an autonomous kingdom, likely populated by Iranian peoples. It is uncertain whether the loss of Anshan forced the king to abandon this title later. Šutruk-Nahhunte described himself as an expander of his country. In his inscriptions he invoked the spiritual support of several earlier kings whom he claimed as ancestors. Although the Elamite language remains difficult to interpret, it appears that he conducted campaigns northwest of Elam. One inscription mentions places such as Corinthas and Arman, suggesting that the kingdom extended its influence into regions near the Zagros Mountains. However, these conquests were probably temporary episodes within the larger and ongoing struggle between Elam and Assyria, particularly during the reigns of Sargon II and Sennacherib. In 699 BC, Šutruk-Nahhunte was deposed by his younger brother Halusu-Insasinaq. At the same time, the political situation in Mesopotamia was rapidly changing. Merodach-Baladan had once again been defeated by the Assyrian king Sennacherib and had taken refuge in the marshlands along the Elamite coast. To eliminate this threat, Sennacherib organized a remarkable military expedition. He assembled a fleet composed of Phoenicians and Cypriot Greeks, which sailed down the Euphrates and attacked the Elamite coast in 694 BC, devastating the region. Yet this campaign left Assyria's rear exposed. Seizing the opportunity, Halusu-Insasinaq invaded Babylonia, captured Sennacherib's son Ashur-nadin-Sumi, and took him prisoner to Elam, where he was probably executed. Despite this dramatic success, the following year brought disaster. The allied Elamite and Babylonian forces were defeated by the Assyrians in central Babylonia. Halusu-Insasinaq retreated to Susa, but the citizens refused to admit him into the city. Eventually he was killed by his own people, who placed his son Qutur-Nahhunte on the throne. The early Neo-Elamite period reveals a kingdom caught between survival and ambition. Despite the scarcity of sources, it is clear that Elam remained a significant political force in the ancient Near East. Its rulers forged alliances with Babylonian leaders, challenged the might of Assyria, and attempted to shape the balance of power in Mesopotamia. At times they even achieved remarkable victories. Yet the kingdom was also vulnerable to internal rivalries, shifting alliances, and the overwhelming military strength of its neighbors. In the next video, we will continue this story. We will examine the Great Coalition against Assyria, the devastating Assyrian invasions of Elam, the destruction of Susa, and the final fate of the Elamite Kingdom, a story that ultimately connects Elam to the rise of the Persian Empire itself.